basics out of the way, let's start the conversation with Joe Augustine, head coach, speaker, MC of Joe Augustine Productions. Joe, thank you for joining us this afternoon. When we first started, yep, can just make sure we can hear you. Yep. Okay.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, I was like, okay, I think I can.
I was waiting for the big introduction, so
yes.
I have to kind of wait on that side there, waiting until you say nicely, and then I come out and then, hello, everybody. Okay, so I'll leave and come back again.
Okay. Joe, when we first started planning this session, we were kind of like cracking our heads over what topic, how to title this presentation, and you had a pretty nice one called "Keeping Your Pants On" in a webinar, right? Unfortunately, it didn't really go down very well with our SCS comms team, right? They were not a big fan of that. But let's talk about it. I want to hear your views on why you thought that was important, and perhaps you can tell us if you're wearing your pants now.
Okay, I tell you what, I'm going to start off with the very first thing that I thought about when I said yes to it. Right, one thing is when you agree to anything and you want to create something, the important thing is to get attention. That is probably one of the biggest things anyone needs nowadays is attention, because if you have anything to do, anything to sell, any kind of service to provide, whatever it is, if you can't get someone to look at you or be interested to even pay some attention to you, then you don't have a chance at all to even get them. So the idea nowadays is to think about thumb-stopping content, right? You need to have something that as someone's scrolling through their phone and different things, they see something and they go like, oh, okay, I'm going to stop and do that. So when I thought about this in a number of ways, one is how do you get someone to be a little bit more interested in what might look like a normal webinar offering from SES? I mean, you're a society, you're pretty serious. I would imagine those things are sort of the things that people might imagine about it. So if you're cooler than that, I hope I'm not insulting you. So when someone sees something
well, cool. Look at my living room.
It's so convincing, Nicholas. Yeah, so when someone looks at something like that and they see some regular kind of title, it gives the brain permission very quickly to say, okay, I'm just going to ignore that. So I thought, okay, let's come up with a title which is going to catch people's attention, make them stop for a bit. And I think it was going to be a little bit fun. People would snigger and just go like, "Oh, SCS doing something a little bit naughty. Sounds like fun." But unfortunately, it was deemed to be too naughty, too dangerous, too close to the elections. I don't know. There's so many things that made it difficult to do. So in the end, we came up with this other idea, which was, the 5 most expensive things mistakes you can make in an online presentation. I can't remember the title actually, but it's the next best thing for getting attention. Like if I can't use something embarrassing or something maybe has a slight salacious angle to it, we'll do something that costs money. So money is the next thing, right? So sex and money. So the lesson first of all,
in defense of our comms team, if you had mentioned to keep your pants and like your skirts or whatever, something else, maybe right, you not seen to be so manly and sexist, right?
Well, I will, if we have time, we can get to the political correctness and all that a bit later on. But so that was the first thing about keeping your pants on. But there is something else to it as well. And that basically is that when you are fully dressed, and this is going to be funny. I wanted to show the video, but I think everyone's seen the video already of the guy, who's discussing South Korea on the BBC, and then his kids kind of interfere, or they jump into the room, and there's a whole panic in the background. Like his wife is scrambling in to try and retrieve the kids and all that, and he's just seated there, continuing to go on. And people have asked, why do you think he just stopped, and didn't do anything? And one of the theories that's going around is that he didn't actually have proper pants on. So if you don't have your pants on, you don't have the ability to go, something is wrong here, and to get up and just go. But that aside, there's also this thing about being prepared. When you're doing any kind of presentation or talking to people or doing whatever it is, right? The psychology that you need to have for yourself is, I'm fully prepared. I am 100% here. And I'll tell you, when you look down and you see last night's pants, or whatever you slept in, it actually is a subtle thing to yourself. This is a kind of it interferes with the authenticity of your communication. So that is the idea. Be dressed, be presented in a way that you're gonna be happy for someone to see you in, and that's really one of it. I think we're talking way too much about that particular thing right now. So I'd like to do something else right now with the audience, right? Before we start, I want to actually find out how you are feeling here. So we're going to start the first poll. So if you just launch the poll here, and I'm hoping that we can have this conversation here and be authentic about this as well. Because I know it's not been the easiest of times. So if you can take a moment right now, just very quickly, just tell us how you're feeling. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had a change in our lifestyle and circumstances. I'm just going to take a few seconds to give you a chance to respond. These, by the way, are not world-changing polls. Okay, we haven't redrawn any of the boundaries to try and change the result of the votes as well. But anyway, so largely, okay, we can close it and publish it. That most of you are feeling okay, so that's really great. And another part of this is I like to find out more about what the audience is made up of. So can I find out now from poll number 2, which are the following best? Well, first of all, I'm talking about the makeup of the audience, right? So can I find out who we have in the audience right now? First by gender. So can I have poll number 2, please? And while that goes up,
Poll 2. Okay, let me see.
Okay, we'll stop sharing first.
Okay, stop sharing.
Then we go to poll 2. Okay, so now we'll launch poll 2. Now, as you look at this question, I know some of you are going to go like, hang on, I don't understand this. This is the world we live in now. It's different. I mean, besides the balance of male, female, there's also, of course, people who identify as along different lines. It would seem not on this particular call, but that's something that I wanted to accommodate as well, and that's something else that I think I'd like to have people think a little bit more about when you do not just your online meetings, but just meetings in general and associations and what have you, to think about it in terms of inclusivity. So people are talking about things that it's about including people from all different sides. Now, I'm not saying necessarily it's about gender. It could be about the way people think as well, the way you're aligned. And the interesting thing about this for me is that if you asked me to make a prediction, and I think if you ask most people to make a prediction about what the poll result would be for this question in terms of the balance for male versus female, just that balance, I think many of us would have guessed, because it's SCS, that the numbers would have been actually a bit more male heavy. I don't know, Nicholas, is that a fair guess on my part?
Well, usually we have
the
slightly more males. Yes.
Yeah, so but
Good
maybe
guess,
maybe
good
you know the stats on the inside, but my feeling was like, okay, it's going to be a little bit more male heavy. But I'm actually surprised and pleasantly
Yeah.
so. We have more women
Yes, that's right.
on this meeting today than others. Okay, so now next thing is what do you do? So can we go to the third poll? I'm gonna try and run this as well. So I just treat that the male female number. Yeah.
You have to maybe graduating a bit. Maybe our SCS comms was right after all.
About the pants.
About the pants.
Yeah. Well, I found it very interesting that it was about that pants would be an issue about being sexist. I really had no idea that was the case, and I would actually, you know what? I would like to get a third poll question to find out more about that. So that would be good to learn. But let's have the third poll right now, which is about professions. So it's up on the screen right now. Can I find out from you who you are on the call? We're just getting an idea who's on the call right now. By the way, if you've just joined us, thank you very much for being part of this. It's really quite humbling, for me to find out that this is that so many of you have registered for this, and that you're hoping to get some value out of this. So I feel a lot of pressure right now, just so you know. But okay, we can end the poll, and I think we have all the responses more or less already. So most of you are full-time employees, I see. Quite a few in management, a few entrepreneurs, and yeah, so I can see various circumstances here. So I have an idea now, a little bit more of who is with us in the audience. Now, I was so when I was thinking about this particular presentation, and I'm going to be upfront about this. I'm not going to. So someone asked earlier, said, "Are we going to share the slides for this presentation?" And I laughed for about 2 minutes. No, I usually would be doing slides for a presentation like this. The truth really is that I've been really too busy with all kinds of stuff to sit down and do that. But I thought to myself, what we could do is perhaps just have this to and fro, and myself and Nicholas. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through bit by bit some of the things that I feel have helped along the way. You know, and even that thought about having, okay, let's just say having your bottoms on, is it okay? Is it less, it's less gender specific? Having your bottoms on while you're doing a presentation, I think that's part of the important thing. It's part about that total getting ready to present kind of mode. But I'd like to talk about something else that you would have experienced in the last few minutes if you're just right now here on the call. And that is the waiting room experience, okay? So, but before I do this, I want to explain to everybody that I'm an equal opportunity offender, as in like everybody also kena, you know, if I have something to say that is relevant. So this is what most people are going to actually see when you enter, you know, a meeting room. When you register for a webinar and you get there, I'll just take this off here. You are going to get to this kind of a screen, and you know that's basically what people are going to see. So that's your expectations in terms of like, you know, when you get there. And then nothing much actually happens. So I want to share with you just what I do for some of the bigger brands that I work with. And what we try to do is to think about what are the impressions that are being made along the way. Okay, so the way this talk's going to go is I'm going to just keep talking about the things that are important to me, and I'm hoping along the way you will find some notes that are useful for you and that you can use in your own presentations and your own business. So I do a number of talks, a number of webinar series right now for NUS. And the objective that they had, the NUS Yong Loo School of Medicine, what that they have is to basically help other people, help more people understand about COVID-19. And also to increase the branding and the stature of NUS in the international stage, right? So I want to show you what it is that our participants get to when they arrive early at the webinar. And then I'm going to show you as well what we do as a little bit of an introduction to the webinar so that people can kind of get into it, all right? So this is, and I'm going to talk over it, so I hope I can be heard over it as well. So as you come into the webinar, what you're going to see is this. There's also a countdown that sort of creates a little bit of excitement. And I'm going to not go through all the disclaimers and messages that go through at this point. But when the countdown basically is coming down closer to the actual start of the webinar, this is what happens. You get an introduction to the topic. So I'm just going to interrupt the end. Basically, it's a bit of a corporate video that starts off the presentation. But I'm just going to have this conversation. I guess with Nicholas as well. I mean, when it comes to webinars and stuff like that, I don't think many of us see that kind of presentation as being part of a webinar or online meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a really good example, and it's no knock on our SCS waiting room experience. So, but I would say that yeah, it was. We wanted to get some tips from you as well, and and we decided to invite all our friends and members to join in, and so it's a good tip for us.
Now, and by the way, I'm not, like I said, like the way I do
Oh no,
this,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
I'm aware that I place people in jeopardy every time I share these things, but it's just about that little extra that helps people make an impression. So, and to be fair, you guys were spending a lot of time trying to work on the background, make sure it's all nice as well before it started as well. So you were concerned about making a good impression, and that's wonderful. So I really laud you for working for that amount of time to try and create that particular background that you have on there as well. So good stuff there, right? So that is one of the big mistakes that I think companies make, big mistakes, and that is where they don't think about what it is that they're trying to achieve during these events, right? So you think about when you think about what you're doing, let's say in a business sense or whatever it is. You're actually presenting a storefront. You're presenting, the frontage of your building or whatever it is, and we spend so much money on those things. We spend so much money on logo design. We spend money on IDs and lighting on our real world offices to make sure that it makes a nice impression when someone comes in. And then sometimes what happens is we forget that this medium is also the same thing, that someone can come into it, like for instance, I mean, one of the best ways to show an example is to show a bad example or a counter example. Apple, I mean, if you were to attend an Apple conference online and the production standards weren't quite up to it, right? I mean, let's say let's say you tune in for an Apple, keynote or whatever it is, right? And then before the start of the Apple keynote, you get this, right? I mean, you go, hey, it's not quite the same level or standard that you've come to expect from them, and it's nothing to stop many other people from just adding to it. So you don't have to do crazy graphics and sound and whatever that I like to do, because I tend to overdo things. But you can do a little bit extra, and so we had that with the slides at the start of it, and then we had Nicholas giving you the announcements. But a little thing that I might add just to help things along is a little bit of music, right? So music is a way to let people go like, okay, this is a through line that something is happening and there's a feeling of it. What
Better still
you
if
saw,
it's hypnotic music, maybe.
hypnotic music is very good, so everybody sleep. Now it's something that sets the tone. So in the message that in what I did just now, it's not just the visuals that we're trying to create the impression, but if you notice as well, there was a kind of crescendo in terms of the information as well to make it relevant. So the video I showed you was actually the video we ran for last night. So those numbers, I mean, it's amazing to have a number like 15 million become out of date by the next day. But all those numbers are all correct, and we talk about the latest developments and all that. And it happens to be that last night was a talk about, virus vaccinations and other forms of immunization. So the topics were very, very much set up by the introduction. So the thing to think about is all your communication and all the things you do along the way is actually a setup for the next thing, right? So from your first contact with someone, when you send out that first email or the EDM, that's a thing that links to the next thing, which is the registration, and which links to the next thing, which is the email you get after your registration, and every single one of those things actually form part of that experience that moves on to the next. So if you can think about it that way, that's the very expensive mistake that some people make. They don't think of this online experience as being a longer term thing. It's something which happens with a start, a middle, and maybe an end, and then you're trying to get surprises along the way. We tend to treat it very much like the medium we see most of our invitations, and we look at it and go like, oh, it's an email. So we'll just send out an email. It's not seen as that means of enticing someone to the next thing. So the excitement level, to be able to go and try to entice someone by poking them a little bit and maybe saying something like, "Why wear pants?" We're gonna go back there again. Okay, so
but I think you make a very good point about the whole entire end-to-end experience, and how a lot of businesses have spent a lot of money making sure the retail, the physical experience, is really good. But we're in a different situation, different scenario, and now with online, maybe perhaps the investments used to go into like websites, some videos, and now it almost feels like we need a new skill set, new investments in live video, live streaming, and I guess it's just a lot to think about for business owners and employers and even employees on the kind of investments, infrastructure, equipment they need to have a really good online experience. So yeah, do you want to talk a bit about the kind of investments or equipment or infrastructure you think potentially is required? And before you go to that, just want to remind everyone, please join in the conversation in the Q&A. Type in your questions, and as I see them pop up, I'll try to bring them into the conversation.
Yeah. So, business owners and big brands aside, now let's talk about the big group in the room, which are people who are employed as well. And you're thinking to yourself, how does this really affect me? So let's talk about this in terms of your just this presentation, right? So we all spend some time on clothes. We spend some money as well on clothes when we show up at work, when we know we have a big meeting. So the thinking that I'm trying to encourage people to do now is to go, okay, what we have is we have a new way of dressing up for work, and it's a new way of showing up for work. And if you can think about it this way, now how you show up for work is not just you, not just yourself, but also your background. And we have this virtual background thing that goes around as well. So I'm going to share a few simple tips to make it work. So if you want to use virtual backgrounds, one of the best things you can do, in fact, okay, first of all, we start with the best thing. The best thing you can do, which is the probably more expensive thing to do, is you have to use a green screen. Right. So what I've got is a green screen, and one of the key things to make a green screen work is that, first of all, it has to be very even, and secondly, and more importantly, it has to be very evenly lit. So that is the tricky part. Most people are not going to do that part with the good lighting for the green screen. Okay, so the second thing you can do if you're talking about virtual backgrounds is you just have to give the computer as much of a chance as possible to find your outline, because basically what the computer is trying to do, and I'm speaking to the choir here, is it's running an algorithm that is figuring out where the human outline is, right? So the easiest work a computer can do in that kind of way is if you give the background, if you give a completely contrasting background. So if you have like black hair, you have a normal complexion, shoot yourself against a white wall, and the computer has the best chance of figuring out if you're using virtual background without green screen, right? And the reason why I feel it's important is that we've all been there where you see this sort of like slightly freaky thing sometimes, like when things disappear and reappear or whatever it is. It's distracting, and if someone is talking to you and listening to something important that you're saying, and while that's happening, some crazy distortion is happening around your face or ears or whatever it is, it takes away from that. So my advice is to invest in that. The investments you need to make to do with cameras as well. So there are a lot of people who have like, for instance, they have Apple products. I gotta tell you, Apple phones have the best cameras. Apple laptops cameras, not so good. okay, and that's going to be surprising to a lot of people. If you have really great light, most cameras work well, but most of us don't live in a situation where the light is really great all the time. So be very careful about that. So this is the next idea that I had in terms of one expensive thing that you can do is to actually invest too much. Okay, so two ideas here actually in one, okay? One is invest in a good camera, right? Spend a bit of money on a good camera. But what I'm going to do is say don't spend too much on a good camera. So I've had a lot of people say to me that, okay, I want to invest in a good camera. I see what you have on screen. I really like what you do and all that. So I've gone ahead and I've ordered a big 4K camera, a 4K webcam. So you have like the Brio and all that. And those are really great cameras, but it's too much camera because if you think about how cameras work, cameras have to pick up what it can see as well. And if you ask me about budgeting, how you would use money, I would much rather people spend on a good 1080 camera, a full HD camera, which you can get for about maybe about a third of the price of a high-end 4K camera, and spend, if you have that budget, spend the rest of it on lights, because lights are really going to make the big difference. And if you get online and you have a look on YouTube videos and you see all these people who present to the screen and all that, that's the real common factor. Most of them have really good lights. And really good lights are such that they're not obvious. You don't want to have lights that you go like, every time you look at a picture, you go, oh, the person's got lights. You just want to see a really nice, clean picture all the time. So you're going to invest in a number of lights. And that can make all the difference. Invest in as big and as warm and as smooth a kind of light as you can do, and try to make sure that it doesn't flicker, because that's going to be an issue as well. So you want to do some research and find a light that is non-flickering. That means its refresh rate is fast enough so that your camera doesn't have some kind of aliasing that goes along with that. Probably a bit too technical. So yeah, spend money on lights more than I would spend money on camera. Okay, so let's go to one more thing now. I want to get a poll going again, and I want to ask you about this next thing here. So have you had, this is poll number 4 now, right? So have you had an embarrassing situation during a video conference? So take a moment there. Have you ever had one? Oh, the yeses did very well for a while. It's like, oh, this is a wow, this is a really interesting result.
Yeah. Well, if we have time, I'd love to hear all.
No, we got. You'll see the results actually drop down now. Say, you want to hear what happened? No. Thank you. Nothing happened. Okay, so this is really good. So I think we have we have what we have here. I'm just going to share that as well. So this is a very interesting point to me, because we have personally had embarrassing situations on a video conference. You can see the number is actually quite high proportionately. It's almost half the audience polled. So we fundamentally, first of all, we know that embarrassing situations can happen, and yet at the same time we also we in this case here, we've actually had those embarrassing situations ourselves, and yet things are going to happen. I'm going to show you a video, and before you worry too much about this video, I've already pixelated the part which I think will be offensive or could be offensive to people, but I think some of you have maybe seen this particular Zoom meeting.
I'm told that our profession is one of the only professions that say that we can never get involved with a former client.
So
ever,
pay attention to
regardless of how long it's been, versus like
to
some
the left
other
side of the
professions say a few
screen.
years or whatever. I think it really depends on just like the ethical standards of the profession. And in reality, I've heard that social work kind of has very high standards, and
it's pixelated, but I realized that actually on Zoom it may have come across a bit because the resolution is very, very low. So low resolution, the low you might see what you might see. But that is a real situation that happened. This is somebody, you know, who's taken the Zoom with them into the bathroom, and it's one of those things that you got to learn in terms of just being able to understand your Zoom controls. Right, there is the mute button, and then there is the video stop video as well. And when you're, especially when you're in a meeting, one of the things that happens is as I'm talking, or as Nicholas is talking right now, our pictures are really big and large. Your pictures are small, and you can easily forget that. So we know that embarrassing situations can happen, and yet we don't actually go ahead and sort of protect ourselves from those situations, right? So simple things like really tape across the, you know, your tape across your camera or whatever. That might be one of the best ways to make sure that everything's okay. You also have to kind of negotiate sometimes with the parties that are involved with you. So here's another example that has been going around recently, and it speaks about the unpredictability of certain, I shall say, stakeholders in your family.
This one was very interesting from somebody called Henry Warren, and he says this: could you please ask them why they're not turning on the subtitles by default on children's TV? It's been shown to double literacy. YouTube, which you mentioned in Caroline, already do it. Kids do it, YouTube Kids do it, and the BBC are also now embracing this. Why, and I apologise for my cat's tail, why are you not doing this by default? Rocco, could you tell them?
So, you know, it happens to the best of us. It happens to the worst of us. But the stakeholders around us, we sometimes don't spend enough time and enough effort on making sure that they are also on board as we're about to do something like that. By the way, this is on purpose. This is all. It's not really what's happening right now. This is another point that I'm trying to make. Bandwidth is another one of the mistakes that I find people are making nowadays. And this is especially if you happen to be working from home, right? So you're working from home, you know, you got all your stakeholders, including your cat. But if you're going to do meetings, especially when the rest of the family is around and you've only got that much bandwidth to go around, you want to make sure that during those critical times, critical calls, you don't have you know, everybody else in the family watching 4K Netflix and whatever it is. Actually, I mean, the download part isn't probably as much of an issue as the uploading part, but you really have to have a lot of clear bandwidth for uploading, because for video conferencing to come across successfully, that's something that you have to spend some time with. So it really is about planning traffic. You know, you're trying to see, I mean, when we talk about traffic, we talk about net traffic, that's one thing, but also human traffic around the space. There's some, you know, there's lots of videos around where people are in the middle of meetings and their significant others walk across the room because they've just come out from the shower or something else. That's all traffic negotiations that people tend not to think about because you're in your home and you're just doing your thing. But yeah, those are the things that can come up along the way.
Hey, Joe, you know, you were talking about this bandwidth. I remember not too long ago, I was participating in a webinar, and one of the speakers worked for a Fortune 500 live streaming service, right? And everyone was fine, but this speaker had bandwidth internet issues, right? Because new employee working from home and all that, and then we kind of found out that it was because as she was speaking, I think her husband was playing some internet online game somewhere else in the house, and people were talking about it. People were like, "Hey, you work for a live streaming company, you shouldn't have bandwidth issues." But I this is a segue to one of the questions that's just come through the Q&A, and we talked about bandwidth and good quality and all that. And this question is around: is there a way to make sure that participants receive good video quality when we are playing videos and stuff like that? So I know it's a bit of a difficult one, but yeah, it's one of the questions that come up.
Okay, so there is an old saying in broadcasting, the grand old broadcasters will tell you, shit in, shit out. So, um, and it goes down to a number of things. So besides bandwidth, it's also the actual encoding itself. So it goes back to what I was talking about before, the camera, to make sure you capture the picture. And actually, the other thing that is very important, and people don't realize is important until it's bad, is actually audio. So when I do my meetings and I do my presentations and webinars, one of the things that I really work on is actually the quality of sound. And people don't realize how much is coming across in terms of sound. We could actually turn off, the videos right now, and if we have a good conversation, people will be able to follow, right? That's not the case if we turn it the other way around. If I just put video on and there's no sound, suddenly it's an issue, you know. So I would say invest in good sound, because if you think about how Zoom works, and this is really the best example, right? The quality of the video I'm sending out to you right now cannot be higher than what Zoom can provide, which is only 360p. That means it's very low resolution. It's half the resolution or a quarter of the resolution of 720p. And if you do all the math, I don't know how much smaller it is compared to HD, right? But the quality of the initial image that I'm putting out to you that's being compressed through that small funnel makes a difference. So I'm hoping that as you see what you see through the Zoom call right now, what you see is some good quality video and audio. And the best way to make sure that you get good video and audio through is actually you start with good video and audio. You actually have to compress it. You have to have good base material to start with. So again, back to the old thing: invest in lights, invest in a microphone. And then in terms of bandwidth, okay, I'll tell you what the technical requirements are for getting good video out, right? The technical requirement is actually 3 megabits per second, which is actually very low, right? In reality, you probably have to have much more bandwidth. So on the topic of bandwidth and making sure you have clear images, this is one thing that you should think about. You should always have you should always do a speed test from wherever it is that you are. If possible, get on the wired internet, because that's your best sort of connection. But from wherever you are, if you plan to do a call on Wi-Fi, and even if it's on wired as well, do a speed test so you know that you have the bandwidth, and that's going to be basically one of the major stumbling blocks. And if you know what happens with meetings as well, most video conferencing software will actually stop video first before it will stop audio. So as your bandwidth gets smaller, it'll start to, first of all, decrease the quality of your video, and then ultimately maybe drop off the frames, frame updates. But your last hope actually is the audio side. So I hope I'm answering the question and a little bit more.
Yeah, and since we're on this slightly technical part of the conversation, I'm going to club the next two questions together, and they're about the technical and tools. So there's one question about, just now you had this little stun, right? Where then there was this spinning thing. So the question actually is like, how did you do that? That was the question, and maybe club together with an earlier question was you put up the NUS webinar example, and the question was just around like what were some of the tools that you think you could recommend to create some of that good waiting room experience. So yeah.
Okay, so I can tell you what I use. I use a software called Mimo Live, and that's it's from a German company called Boinx, Boinx. And they're very interesting because they are sort of one commercial step above the other one, which many people have heard of before. I'm sure it's called OBS. So OBS is a software that you can run on most computer systems. And what it essentially is a live layering system. So you can draw video sources, image sources, whatever it is, and build it up layer upon layer. And if you use green screen to alpha to provide transparent channels, it's really like live Photoshop, right? So you're creating live Photoshop images. The challenge with equipment like that or software like that, especially with OBS, because OBS is more it's open sourced, and so that tends to be a little rough around the edges, but it's very powerful stuff. Is that your computer really has to be good, as in you really have to have a lot of headroom in terms of processing power, in terms of GPU power as well, to be able to run something like that in real time, so that it doesn't compromise the rest of your computing abilities as well. So what happens, like in the case of this, what I was using just now, I'll try and show. Well, you know, I can. Okay, I'll just show you like this thing again for anyone who missed it. This is based. It's all it is just a video of that circle thing going around on a green screen that I've overlaid one layer on top of it, and the whole thing is being pushed through something called a virtual camera. So the virtual camera is what your software is, like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever it is. What it wants is basically a camera. It doesn't matter what kind of camera. It can be a webcam or whatever. As long as it shows up in the computing system or in the OS as a camera source, it's available to be tapped. And what I'm doing is I'm manipulating this. So if you want to understand a little bit about the process right now, is that I'm being filmed through an HD camera. It's going in, being encoded and taken into the computer, into my software. It is the bottom. It is the second most bottom layer. There's a green screen behind me. So what is that? What is behind this layer is the photograph that you see behind me. So there's one layer behind me. Then there's me as the layer, and then in this particular case, I'm going to add another layer on top of this. So it's one layer on top of a layer on top of a layer. So I can actually end up doing a lot of stuff live. But just keep in mind as well that there is a limitation to how much goes through the Zoom. So 360p means the resolution is not fantastic. You can't do high res stuff, and if you want to share a slide directly this way, the slide will look terrible. Photographs, the clarity and all that might be a little bit compromised.
There's a couple of really good questions coming through, and perhaps if I can kind of like just go with the last technical question and we switch gears a bit, which is the last question is because of your radio voice. The last question is about any recommendation for the kind of mics to go for.
Okay. So what happens when people start looking around for ideas like this is they'll almost always end up with Yeti or one of those famous microphones that are being used by broadcasters or podcasters on YouTube. You see that a lot. And it's a pretty good microphone, but what I'm going to say is I don't recommend that you need to get that kind of stuff, right? So I'm very pleased to be the kind of person that hacks away with the cheapest of solutions. I did ultimately invest in a higher end microphone, which is just above me right now, which is the Rode NTG series, is news gathering and all that. It's one of those gun mics. But before I used this, I actually had another microphone that I used, which was very irritating to a lot of professionals who know about sound and all that. I actually found a microphone that was from Behringer, and basically it was a microphone that has what they call a supercardioid pattern, which means that it picks up sound more on the front end of the microphone than around the sides. There's a whole thing about cardioid versus supercardioid. But it basically had a pattern that picked up more sound along a narrow channel in the front of it. And I bought 3 of them for $39. So you can actually have very cheap solutions that go into a not so cheap solution like an audio interface and amplifies the sound so it goes into the system. But one of the best ways that you can sound good on a webinar or anything like that is actually a lavalier microphone. And the reason is when you have a microphone source that is very near to you like that, first of all, it's a relative volume thing, right? So when you're that close to any, just imagine if you're lying down on someone's shoulder, and they talk, you're only going to hear their voice because all the other sounds relative to that volume is going to be much softer. So if you think about a lavalier microphone, if you invest in a reasonable one, is that it's going to be it'll hear mostly your voice, and that is the most important element of a presentation. So you can invest, I think you don't have to go any more than $50-$60 on one of those, and you get really good quality.
Thanks, Joe. And actually, there's a really good question about like attrition and all that. But maybe first of all, I thought we can switch gears a bit. And you told me there was kind of like a really interesting example about fundraising, right?
Yep.
Over Zoom. Maybe you kind of talk a little bit about that, your experience there, right? Can you really, totally replace, right, the live face-to-face experience on Zoom and end up raising, like in very critical situations like fundraising where people are going to entrust you with millions of dollars? Tell us more about it.
Okay. The answer is yes and no, right? So the answer is that you can't just say that I'm going to put out one webinar and you're going to watch this webinar, and through this one webinar, you're just going to go ahead and commit. Okay. So I was sharing with Nicholas that we did a round of fundraising into last month where we used webinar and recordings of those as well. And in total, the funds that we raised was about 5.5 mil. Not totally on a webinar, right? So the idea, what I'm saying is that it's all part of that process, right? So if you're coming to me as someone who's a tech person and you're asking me to invest in what you're doing, and the impression that I get from you as you are putting together this presentation online is not strong. I don't get the sense that you really know exactly what's happening and how to use things well. And it may not be a checklist sort of thing, as in like, as you watch, I'm gonna be a little bit, I guess, there's no better way to say this, but I hope that this is a good example of a good impression, right? As you watch this, you should have a pretty great idea that, okay, he knows what he's doing. If he's talking to me about technical stuff and he's advising me on how to get a presentation done or do something like that, you're gonna go like, oh yeah, he knows what he's doing. And if I talk about something else that has to do with technical advice or whatever it is, I'm betting that there is an advantage built into just this, right? So with regards to the fundraising thing, it's also about sequencing. It's also thinking about what your presentation is going to appear as to the other side. Most people will approach a meeting online as they would a meeting in person, as they would sometimes a large scale presentation, and that usually is actually with a lot less moment by moment preparation. They're not going to go like, okay, when I do this, so I show this slide, this is going to cause this reaction, and I'm going to give a moment for them to pause and think about this. So without that thought that goes into the moment by moment, you're going to have, I think, the same corresponding result. It won't be as impactful, right? So what I would like to say is always think about the impact of what you're doing at the time. And one of the things that I'm doing throughout the entire presentation right now, I hope you see this, is that I'm looking right down the camera. And I'll tell you that the picture or the screens that I have to look at and all that are actually more on this side. But that camera is that ultimate connection that you can make right now on an online meeting. And if you like, one of the simplest things is just stick a picture of someone right next to the camera. So when you look up and you can see a picture there of someone there, and that becomes your reference point, and that's how you focus on someone.
Very inspiring and impressive. Well, congratulations on that $5.5 million fundraise. Actually, that's a really good question about engagement and attrition. But just before that, there were a couple of questions that came back in on the microphone, just to kind of like get that out of the way. I think there was a question about what was the name of the microphones. I think
okay.
It was Rhodes and Behringer, right? And Lavalier.
Yeah. So the high end stuff that I'm using is a Rode NTG3 and an NTG2. I have two of them. So it's NTG. It's a news gathering based one. So that's if you want to go high end. It means that the whole chain is going to be expensive because you have to get an amplifier as well, a sound, like an audio interface that supports phantom power, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. The great news is that all this stuff you can find on the internet, right? You can find the answers on the internet. But the other end of it, with the Behringer, I think it's spelled Behringger.
Yep.
And you know what? The great thing about Google is you spell that, and Google said, "Did you mean this instead?" I don't know if that microphone is still available anymore because I've looked around and I couldn't find them anymore. I bought 6 a long time ago, so that was a great investment. But the basic news is that you can look, and one of the great things really about microphones in the last 15-20 years is this. There's so many microphones being produced in the world at such great quality that it's actually hard to find a bad one. You actually have to work to find a bad microphone, right? So it used to be, you spend $10, $20 on a microphone, and you'll be like, okay, it's going to sound like hell. But now, seriously, it's hard to find a microphone that doesn't sound pretty good. So the thing that you're going to focus in on actually is about the pickup of the microphone, actually. So how it picks up the sound around you. And how you're going to use the microphone. So like I said, lavaliers are great because they're very close. And you can do some research online. It's very simple. You say, I want to see reviews on this particular microphone. Someone will have recorded their voice using this, and you'll be able to hear the quality and go like, okay, that's pretty good. So I've actually bought some microphones purely on those on the basis of reviews. I bought as many as 20 of these microphones. And they've served me and my clients really well.
And just to maybe cover the last question about microphones and just a basic question about, you mentioned about the super cardioid mics, and the question was, is this the same as omni and unidirectional mics?
Okay. So I'm going to try and do this in less than a minute, okay? So there's omni, unidirectional, and super directional. So that's just think about that, right? So omni means I can hear in all directions. So if you think of a microphone as a pair of ears, you can listen. So your ears are actually quite omnidirectional, your natural hearing, right? But just imagine that if you could just focus in on the sound coming in from one particular place. Now that's becoming more unidirectional. And if you think about supercardioids, basically means that it has much more focus on the sound that's coming down from one particular aspect. So that's the general rule. Now there's of course ups and downs, right? So if you're omnidirectional, I can move anywhere and like this and all, you can still hear me, no problem, right? But if you're talking about something like a super directional, and I am off the axis like this right now, if you can only hear me through the little hole there, when I go off, it's going to be softer and all that. So those are the trade-offs. So that was my 45-second answer.
Great. Now the next question is a interesting one, right? So it's a bit of a long one, but it's talking about event registration rate, attendance rate, attention rate, right?
Yeah.
So example, like you could have 1,000 people register, but only maybe 10 people show up, or even though you have like Zoom reminders, Eventbrite reminders, that it doesn't really help with increasing the attendance rate. We could charge like a small token sum, $1 or something like that, but that would decrease the registration rate. And so, do you have any tips or ideas for increasing attendance rate without paying for registration? I think we talked a little bit about that. Maybe you can just expand on it a bit. And also, if it's, let's say, 10 attendees, I mean, this is a question, right? But only 2 of them are really focused, right? The rest are doing online shopping. So the question is, how do you increase the attention rate? So this question comes from JB, said that to try to do giveaways, lucky draws, and intervals and all that. But do you have other ideas, right?
Okay, so yeah, well, the thing is about communication of the reasons to stay. Okay, so the number one thing again, like back to the very beginning of this thing, is about curiosity. People need to be curious about things. They need to feel it's interesting, right? So if I said to you, for instance, I send you 20 emails in a row. I say, okay, I want to remind you about the meeting that we have at 10 o'clock, which is to talk about the quality of an air pressure valve that will release at 30 cubic meters per 30 cubic, whatever I give you. I'm just making this up, right? That inherently sounds boring. So I'm not going to spend some time and think, okay, I'm going to follow that. Or if I get the same message over and over again, this basically says, okay, there's nothing new about this. It's signaling to me that there's something boring at the end of all this, right? So if you have like registration emails, and it sounds like a person who's just really excited about this thing here and all that, like when you sign up, usually what you get is, thank you for registering your interest for this particular webinar. The webinar will be held at whatever day. Please be there early, blah, 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 blah. As opposed to things like, hey, thanks very much for signing up for our webinar. We're so excited to have you join us. And coming up on this webinar, we're going to be sharing a number of things which have never been seen before, including the one secret that has made somebody $2 million in 7 minutes. Right, that's your first one, right? Then another one you have another. Only 3 more days before the webinar. We hope you remember to put a time aside. Besides that one idea that helps one company raise $2 million in 7 minutes, we also are going to be giving away a very special prize, which we think that you're going to enjoy, right? So it's about that constant communication along the way. And this thing about giveaways and stuff, people always say, well, giveaways, not very exciting, not very interesting. I can tell you this, I can give the most boring presentation of all time, but if I guarantee that at the end of this presentation, as long as you've been through the entire presentation, I'm giving away 1 gram of gold to someone who is on the call, I can hold you. I can actually hold you in the room. That's part one of it. I actually have some access to you. The real challenge along the way is, how do you use that tool that you've gotten out to hold someone in to do what you need to do, right? And you have to tie it in. So one of the great ways to have a look at things or consider how to tie in to a reason for people to stay is this. Ask yourself if whatever it is that you're doing, you're promoting, could be removed from what you are trying to get their attention about. That means if I can just take away the goal and it makes no difference to what the message is about, it makes no difference, right? But if I'm giving you like gold, and it's to do with gold investments, it's talking about the price of gold, it's about all these other things and all that, then that is a really strong promotion. The goal is going to work either way, but people are going to stay and take relative action and be connected with you because you have the right kind of promotional tool that goes along with that. So it's constant touch, it's reminding people, it's letting people know that there's something to be missed, if you don't pay attention. And I'm hoping that that's what the situation is right now. In fact, can I do a very quick poll? I know we're running out of time already, but a very quick poll, right? So let's do number 5 very quickly. So that was the supposition you had a while ago, right? As in, like, during meetings and all that, people are going to be doing different things. So I'm just going to go very quickly from this. Let's go like up to 20 seconds, 25 seconds. Okay, so you can see that from these numbers that this is a very high. I'm gonna end it for in the interest of time, right? It's a very high number of people who've been doing something, in a virtual meeting. Here's my next question for you right now, right? Just let's have this one here. Okay, so how many of you are doing it right now, right? How many of you are doing something else right now, right? Now, as these numbers are coming in, first of all, I want to thank you for being honest about it, right? But that is the reality of your the landscape. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, somebody has got something else that has their attention. So if you think that just because someone has got into the room that they're going to be there, well, it's not guaranteed. No one actually is going to there is no guarantee that they're going to be there to be fully engaged all the time and all that. So the job that we have is to constantly try and get attention. So to do that, there's some skills that have to be learned. And this thing that I always talk about in Singapore, right? We put too little attention on this idea of storytelling and presentation as a vital skill. We talk about, I always say that we suffer too much from meritocracy. You know, we believe so much in the idea that if we're good, it's going to be good enough, right? But the thing is, choices are being made, values are being judged, not on these terms. People are no longer just looking at you and then saying, okay, I can see that you have these qualifications and this experience, therefore you are better qualified. I am actually responding to my emotional reaction to you, the story that you're telling, the emotions that I feel, or the feeling that I have from interacting with you. So we have to spend a lot more time on those on those aspects. You know, we need to spend time on the storytelling, on the structure of things, and taking a little time with the presentation. If you think about how most things actually could work, is that you can just say, send an email, right? There's no point getting together and having everybody sit down and then you talk to each other or whatever it is. Just send an email. These are what my thoughts are. Please reply, right? But there is a lot of value in this this interaction. This one-on-one thing where you meet someone, you can look in their eye, you can see what their intention is, and you can hear the sincerity of what they mean.
Joe, thank you so much. I think we are out of time. There were one or two other questions about like recommendation for webcam, you know, copyrighted music and all that. I'm afraid we might not be able to dive too deep into that. But maybe the last question, and it's a good way to end the session, is a question from Eunice, who said, can you summarize the 5 most expensive mistakes?
Okay. I haven't been tracking exactly where they are, but I'm going to just so Eunice, you already arrived after the part where I said I have no slides, right? One of it is just bad video, right? So if you don't invest in good video, and good video just includes your slides and your graphics as well, that's making a poor visual impression. Okay, so you can invest some time to create good visuals, and also to invest some money in your cameras and stuff, so that you can get good video on this as well. Bad sound is terrible. There's a great campaign that's out there by one of the companies. I can't remember who it is, but it said, what is the most expensive word in business? You know, you think about this, when I speak to you and I say something and I give you an idea, and if your first thing to me after that is, what? And because you can't hear me or you didn't quite make it out, that's a very expensive thing, and it actually impacts business and the smoothness of business and how comfortable I feel. It's one of the most embarrassing things. If you talk to somebody, you can't really hear them. If you haven't got that relationship going, you might not even go as far as what. You just go, okay, and then nothing happens, right? Insufficient negotiation with your stakeholders on bandwidth. This is very important, especially if you're working from home. You want to make sure that you have the people around you be on board, and they are going to be able to say, okay, you know what, at this particular time, mommy, daddy needs the internet for whatever they need. What was the thing about this? Oh yes, and one of the most expensive things is not learning to make eye contact. And it's one of those things, isn't like, you know, when you're doing your presentations, it's very important to reach out there and connect with the camera. Now, it doesn't mean that you never look away for your slides or whatever it is. That's going to happen as well, but always come back to the person, because that is what it is. Ultimately, forgetting that this medium is a one-to-one connection. It is even on this webinar, it is one person at a time that is being impacted, hopefully, by the communication. So that I think that counts, brings us to 4.
Your last one, or actually there were a couple more about being prepared, the entire experience in the waiting room and all that. I love the one that you talk about managing your stakeholders, right? Try managing your cat, right? That's
yeah. I was going to bring it all the way around back to number 1, and the number 1 thing is just your pants. You know, just keep your pants on. I mean, And for the reasons that I talked about in terms of psychology, right? Just come fully prepared for the experience or the thing that you have in mind. Just be fully prepared for that and be present. That is going to make so much of a difference, right? Just putting things aside and whatever it is, come fully dressed. So it's not this thing about, so if I walk away right now, I'm worried about you seeing, whatever, right? It is about coming. It is the metaphor for coming fully prepared, right? It's not just saying, you know what, I'm just going to worry about what's up here and hope you don't notice about what's happening elsewhere. It's about being fully prepared.
Great, thank you so much. We're at the top of the hour. Thanks. I hope everyone got as much out of the session as I did. And Joe, thanks again. Hope we can get you back with us for future sessions. And as we exit and end the session, there's going to be a short survey which we hope everyone can help to answer. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, by the way, in the chat, just give me your feedback. I'd love to hear what you think as well, right?